Good to see you. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Good, good. So we were just talking about staking, and Rated is a portfolio company that provides tools for validators focused on Ethereum. Jay is one of the founding fathers of proof of stake, right? I think in 2015 you published a paper, Tendermint Consensus Without Mining, and that was really one of the I think before that, there were a few attempts at proof of stake that weren't true proof of stake, right? I think there was Peercoin and Blackcoin and a few others. But maybe talk about, just kind of your mindset and thinking, and what inspired you to even, publish that paper and really create the backbone of proof of stake, and which is now kind of a massive industry today.
Thank you for that intro, Nick.
Yeah.
So there was Peercoin, NXT, yeah, and what was clear was that you could formulate like a criteria, or you can formulate an equation or something about security. Is it quantifiable? And Bitcoin was it had credentials. It had power because you can see how much energy there was behind it, and you knew that it was Byzantine fault tolerant to like a formal level. But that was lacking in proof of stake, and so people were looking for solutions in proof of stake, but not enough people looked back in history to see what algorithms had already been invented in Byzantine fault tolerant algorithms. And it turns out the first ones that were invented were not based on proof of work. So proof of work, it's known for being a solution to BFT, but there were ways to create BFT algorithms since the 80s. When I saw the logic behind the fault tolerance levels in the academic papers from like Dwork, Lynch, and Stockmayer, 1988, I realized that here was the answer. We can create something that has quantifiable security. So in the case of the Cosmos Hub, the quantifiable security against a double spend attack is what is the value of a third of the staking tokens? Right? Maybe you can ask a follow-up question.
Yeah. So that's a pretty good history. So basically, it was you're kind of you were inspired by a lot of the historical work that had been done around Byzantine fault tolerant, and not enough people at the time in crypto were looking at that, and you kind of used that combined with your own knowledge on crypto to basically launch Cosmos and the Cosmos Hub, which I think is really cool. One of the things I really like about your approach is that it wasn't just about a technological innovation, right? It wasn't just about a cheaper, faster chain. It was also kind of this kind of social innovation, if you will, that came with Cosmos, which is the idea of app chains, right? It wasn't just one chain that all developers were going to build on. It was app specific chains that developers would build their own and then connect together in some way. And this is, I think still people don't really appreciate kind of how novel this was at the time and how unique it still is. But I guess, how has that vision, this kind of sovereign chain vision that you kind of created, how has that played out over the past 5 years relative to, what your vision was when you had it back then?
Yeah, it was very clear in some respects that there would be many different chains with their own sovereign validator set, with their own where they own their own security, because in the very least, nations and states would need them, and they would want their own, and large corporations would want their own data center cluster, right? Um, and and so Tendermint was created to allow not just proof of stake, but it's really just a BFT consensus layer, and above it you can build proof of stake systems like we did for Cosmos, or it could be proof of authority, any system you want. You can Tendermint handles the Byzantine fault tolerant security aspects, and the thesis was that okay, yeah, by within a few years there would be 10,000 blockchains, and that's pretty much what happened. I think that probably could have done a better job in promoting the tool set and making that easier to get even more adoption. But as it is, we have a lot of zones and a lot of blockchains connected to the Cosmos Hub via IBC. IBC being inter-blockchain communication. It's basically like client proofs between blockchains, so that blockchains can prove to each other that this header is really the latest header. And using this technique, which is really efficient in Tendermint, more efficient than in proof of work, you can pass packets between blockchains, and you can create inter-blockchain communication protocols. And that thesis has proven itself. So, it exists. We have different dApps, including exchanges, and other dApps on the Cosmos Hub. I guess a few years ago, I was looking into something called the Virgo project, which is code name for essentially social applications on the blockchain. One thing that was surprising was how long it took to get to a state where we can actually focus on building social dApps, because I don't think there are enough usable social dApps. But that's exactly what we need in order to create foster censorship resistant, robust social communication channels. So this is an area we're looking into with Noland, but I think I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah, no, that's we heard from Dan Romero from Farcaster earlier, who's building a decentralized social, and I think it's still kind of very early. And in the future, crypto to date has been kind of all about speculation in DeFi or NFTs or whatever, and we're going to enter a period where it's apps that are based on communication, organization, information, not just purely speculation. And I think definitely Cosmos is well suited, the Cosmos SDK in particular, for developers that want to build social dApps. One of the kind of interesting things I think about Cosmos is the nature, how you built the thing, and the nature of the whole thesis is that anyone in the world who wants to can use the Cosmos SDK and build their own dApp chain, right? And it may, many of these people, have nothing to do with you. You maybe you've never interacted with them before, but then they go on to, aggressively market themselves or whatever. And there's been some bad actors, that have kind of done this. You basically used Cosmos SDK to, make a lot of money for themselves at the expense of retail or whatever. How do you feel about that? I think it's, in some ways, it's kind of the nature of the beast in what you've built in terms of being kind of open and permissionless, and anyone can use it. But things like Luna and Binance, most people that are using these probably don't know that it's Cosmos SDK. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, my thinking on it has evolved over the years. So the SDK is really good for developing a dApp in Golang. And I got the idea from just the open source ecosystem, because I loved working with open source code, and I was familiar with a a lot of libraries, popular libraries and frameworks in various languages. And I kind of geeked out on framework design because, I mean, you see the movie like The Social Network and it kind of drills into you platform, 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 right? Like, okay, well, I can do that. Um, but okay, so we published Tendermint to Consensus and the Cosmos SDK, Apache 2. I suppose we can do a better job enforcing attribution, right? We haven't really looked into doing that, but I guess that's the onus of enforcing that is on us. It's something we haven't really got into because we're just busy, solving other problems. But right, like when you launch a software project that is open source, liberal, or even copyleft, you're going to get front runners who try to take advantage of that code, with or without giving you attribution. You're going to make it seem like they're competent enough to create the whole thing for themselves, which isn't always the case, and certainly hasn't been the case. I think the solution is really comes with the evolution of blockchain software design. I think that consensus layer and maybe like the glue that we call the SDK kind of settles down. And there will be variations in different designs and different implementations that are faster and so on. But I think a lot of that will settle. But then I see the need to enable programming blockchains, dApps, through smart contracts, kind of in the likeness of Solidity that no other smart contract system I know of has gotten close to solving. So the notion is that you can write a function and just upload it in a transaction and then it'll run forever. I mean, it's really a powerful concept. But if you look at the alternatives to Solidity and Ethereum, a lot of them require a lot of boilerplate, it's more than just a function, right? Well, I think this is going to change because we are changing it with one smart contract system we call GNO, which is derived from the Go language, and it attempts, it is an attempt, and I think it is very successful so far in creating a better, more accessible smart contract language based on Go. And the way you write programs in the smart contract system is kind of like Solidity in that it can be very succinct, and it's much more succinct than writing a module in the Cosmos SDK. And that's the power provided by the virtual machine that's implemented. And so where I see this going is the need to innovate, perhaps at the licensing of a virtual machine, but also perhaps the licensing of smart contract code contributed by various contributors, to create an incentive system that really not only funds and backs the underlying virtual machine, but also all the ecosystem contributors that wrote the smart contracts and those libraries that make everything easy. And for that, I think we need something more than Apache 2. Perhaps a revenue sharing scheme can be baked into any of these licenses, maybe the copyleft license.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something we're looking into today.
So yeah, for those that don't know, GNO Land is kind of Jae's latest project, and GNO Land, in my perspective, in some ways deviates from the sovereign chain thesis. And correct me if I'm wrong, Jae, but I mean, rather than a lot of developers want to build their own chain with their own validator set, but some may not want to do that and may want to just write an application without worrying about consensus and validators. And that's really what that's really the idea behind GNO Land, correct?
I would say GNO Land is a hub. It is its own blockchain, but what it wants to do is enable the virtual machine to run on any blockchain. So even an independent validator set, I think we need to get to the point where anyone can create a ICS, interchain security, scaling system in any region of the world, and then the license. Imagine if the no land license just allowed anyone to run as long as royalty fees are paid back to a system that distributes it well.
Got it. But you, as a developer, you will be able to just deploy an application on the GNO hub without doing anything else, correct?
Oh yeah, yeah. Anyone will be able to upload code, and then it'll run just like uploading the Solidity contract to Ethereum. Yeah.
And if they want to create their own chain, they can, but they don't have to, basically.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Got it. This, I mean, this is clearly a hot kind of topic in Cosmos land currently. Canto is kind of the latest kind of meme chain that seems to have captured a lot of attention based on, I think, more than anything, good memes, just because it's kind of popular at the moment. I'm curious, do you have a view on Canto? Have you looked at Canto at all, or no?
Okay. No, I haven't seen Canto.
You've seen the meme, I'm sure.
If I see it, I might recognize it.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I want to get a little more into GNO land, but I guess before that, in terms of Cosmos tooling, kind of generally at the moment, things like wallets and block explorers and kind of the basics that you need for applications. What's your current view on the state of that? Is it fair to say that there's work to be done there? Because I mean, I use Cosmos, Cosmos chains practically every day, and I use Kepler, and I think Kepler is a pretty good wallet. And I use Osmosis for swapping. I think Osmosis is pretty good as well, but I think there is kind of a big room for improvement, particularly in kind of wallets and and explorers and dexes as kind of three examples. So what do you think? What do you think of the current state of just kind of the products that are on that are built with Cosmos?
Yeah, well, I've also used Kepler quite a bit, and yeah, but I think the industry or many people are in agreement that we need alternatives. Like forking Kepler will probably be a good idea, and encouraging forks of it. But there's other wallet.
Why do you think that? Why do you think what's the benefit of forking Kepler?
Well, the main criticism I've heard about Kepler is how hard it is to get one's project included. And so that tells me there's a need for other, maintainers of that list and providing access, various strategies for providing access. And there's another wallet project that we're also starting internally in AIB, and the difference there is it has a lot of the Kepler features in terms of the extension, but it's more general than just Cosmos. So the wallet can also handle other chains, and we're working on adding. We will be working on adding features to help make UX better on internet browsers, at the very least. I mean, I feel like, for example, for social media applications, you don't really want to sign a message on a hardware ledger device every time you write a comment. It'd be better if you could create like a login token that had limited ability to do that, and then the extension can just sign it. I don't think we see enough of these kinds of innovations, so we'll be putting some out. And I think the main thing we need the way I see it is we need experimentation, diversity. We need multiple approaches, and at the very least from the top, for different designs like Cosmos focused versus perhaps no land focused, but also general wallet. Also, mm, um, there's also questions about security. Like, you really want the extension to be secure. It's going to take a while for us to figure out, say, what design is truly the most maintainable. you know
Mhm.
and so I believe DAOs, treasury DAOs, like the one, ultimately we want something like the foundation, like the interchain foundation, to be running transparently on a DAO, and for the DAO to have subcategories of funding budget, where it explicitly finds these competitors to fund development of simultaneously, and keeps track of all the goals of all these experiments.
Mhm. So I guess, like, practically speaking, for when Gano Land launches, will do you think Kepler would be the default wallet initially, or do you hope that, or are you working on another wallet that would be compatible with Gano, or how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. Well, it's still on our to-do to reach out to the original developers of Kepler to get that conversation going. We
Mhm.
haven't done that yet, but it's on our stack.
There was
There's
another
also
great wallet. What was the wallet before Kepler, that they disbanded? But they I thought that was a good product, but I guess they couldn't figure out a business model. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
the one from AIB.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The name,
Either way,
I
yeah.
forget the name.
I
Yeah,
can, yeah, you know what I'm
yeah.
talking. Yeah.
hmm There's a GNO land wallet developed by OnBlock, and so we have one solution there that's specific to GNO, um, and the we're continuing the Emeris extension wallet, which I mentioned before, the general wallet system that works beyond Cosmos, and we'll be working with the team to get GNO integration there too.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's certainly, I mean, from one confirmation perspective, we're that's an opportunity we see, and we're looking for founders that are building wallets in the Cosmos ecosystem, because I do think it's a big opportunity. I guess another opportunity within Cosmos is just probably the most widely used crypto application to date, which is swapping, particularly like on-chain swapping, and Osmosis seems to be kind of one of the market leaders there in the Cosmos ecosystem. Um, do you have views on that specifically? I've heard some complain, and I don't necessarily have a strong view on this. From if you're a chain that's launching, and you want to be listed on Osmosis, the way that the whole kind of back end of how that works to date is the assets on your native chain get frozen, and basically a derivative coin is kind of minted on Osmosis, which represents the native chain, and that's not great for the native chain, because it's not deriving value to the native chain, and also there might be kind of security issues with that. I'm curious if you have a view on that.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, I've written a bit about this, and I'll try to summarize. The gist is, we do need token hubs in our ecosystem that provide a hub service to dApp blockchains, and I'd say this is necessary because this allows us to pool security into a hub, and allow a lot of these dApps are not going to have as much security, um, but and so a lot of these chains can fail for a variety of reasons, and wouldn't it be better if we could defer to constitution, but also a competent hub that can ensure that there's a recovery plan that is sensible, right? If you don't have a hub, but you just have IBC connections between blockchains, so you have n squared number of connections, then you really have a problem when a blockchain fails in this
Mm-hmm.
scenario with token pegging,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's one. Another aspect is interchain security. So I call it like some people call it replicated security, simple replicated security. It's kind of like SaaS becomes PaaS becomes VaaS, like validator as a service. But with this, imagine a lot of blockchains providing scaling for a variety of applications, and with the same security, guarantees as the hub or the center of that blockchain. And one of the dApps offers just a standard AMM or order book exchange. So I imagine exchange functionality will become commodity, and that it'll be available almost freely in all kinds of validator sets that function as hubs in their region. And so, yeah, and so I think our focus, that's why our focus is mostly on developing that hub model with interchain security, and we believe this is really going to change the landscape even of Cosmos going forward.
So with GNO, there will be a DEX on the hub, and that will be kind of the primary trading venue, you think, for for dApp coins.
It's hard to say with the regulations what's going to be allowed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we'd like to see GNO land as a blockchain evolved to be something like GitHub, like a repository for good smart contracts that can be imported on other chains to IBC. But maybe our battle is not being let's say fighting the regulators,
Mm-hmm.
right? But maybe instead we should focus on just creating tech to enable other validator sets and their own regulations, right?
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, moving, I guess, to the Cosmos Hub. What would you say is kind of the state of the Cosmos Hub? And I guess particularly Liam in the chat asked, and it was kind of on my list of questions as well. Maybe talk a little bit about the Atom token and how the Atom token is kind of aligned with the success of Cosmos broadly, if at all. And I guess a more straightforward way of saying it, does the Cosmos Hub need a successful DEX for Atom to be really valuable in your view over a long period of time?
Mm-hmm. I've been saying and believing for a while now that the business model for the hub should be general purpose ICS scaling. So, the reason is because, well, remember in 2019 or so, there's a whole year of conferences about Bitcoin scaling, right? And it's sort of like the holy grail. We've experienced like Ethereum and bottlenecks and so on. And so solving ICS is necessary. And it's pretty easy once you have the basic functionality of the hub. So Informal is an entity in the Cosmos space to working on developing ICS, and AIB. We are
when you say
Mhm.
scaling ICS, what do you mean? Some people on here might
Mhm.
not know what that means.
Okay, yeah. So the Cosmos Hub, as an example, has 100, let's say 150 validators. I think it has more, but and there's a certain distribution of voting power allocated to those validators. imagine if those validators, that validator set is not just securing, validating, and signing off on that hub blockchain, but many, many more. So any number of applications that people want the Cosmos Hub validators to run for them. It's the same concept as like Amazon providing EC2 compute, except there's stake behind computation and it's
Mm.
decentralized. Right. So and this seems to be fundamental solution that we need, and Cosmos Hub is well positioned to provide it. And if you provide it, then anyone who creates a good smart contract system, whether that be ported over Ethereum or Cosmos or GNOland or something else, it can benefit from the infrastructure, and the Cosmos Hub validators can earn transaction fees. Right? I think transaction fees are often neglected, but I think it is the going to be the bread and butter of validators, and that by offering many blockchains, by offering scaling, and it's pretty clear how there can be revenue potential there.
Mhm. So what is the current roadmap on achieving that? Is that being worked on currently, or what's holding that back?
Uh-huh. It's just about to get released. So the latest is that, like I mentioned, Informal Inc. Has been working on releasing first version of ICS 1, simple replicated security for the Cosmos Hub. And they're making some small minor changes to kind of simplify it and prepare it for the an iterative roadmap that we've been discussing with AIB, and other people. So it'll roll out very shortly. It'll be iterative, and a lot of companies, including AIB, are going to start, have already started to invest in this technology.
Got it. Very cool. Okay. Are there things that other L1s have done? I would argue that outside of Ethereum, Cosmos has kind of the strongest developer ecosystem, but that hasn't necessarily translated to like attention and value capture, right? There's been, in the short term at least, there's been projects that have done a better job of that, but I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, that it might actually be a great thing long term. But I'm curious if there are things that other kind of non-Ethereum L1s have done a great job at, in your view, that the Cosmos ecosystem could learn from.
Yeah, we explicitly took a engineering first approach with very little marketing, in the hopes that this would enable us to get a technological edge, and it worked. But yeah, we really neglected marketing for a long time. Now there's more bandwidth for marketing, and but we're still learning from organizational issues. And so there's been a lot of shuffling and changes, between the ICF and AIB and other entities. So I see improvement, but the other hand, um, there still are low-hanging fruits that we can learn from other projects, such as how to scale, like to hack at them better, um, and so on, in order to bring more developers and users into our ecosystem. Mm. Well, so far, this worked because our customers were engineers, right? There were other engineers and blockchain developers. I guess, yeah, with ICS, because we are, the industry or the community is agreeing to focus on ICS. what will happen is what we will need to do is we will need to transition to a model where we find good applications, killer applications, whether it be well, applications probably built on top of smart contract systems, but even if it's not, and focusing on building community around these applications. That would be my guess. But we'll, that's just my opinion. But as soon as we have these DAO systems running, then we'll have a lot more experimentation too. So, the challenge there would be just making sure we can create DAO systems that hold strategies to account, right? So we can continue to invest and double down on strategies that work with OKRs and so on.
Mhm. Got it. About, I think roughly 70% of Atom right now is staked, which I looked at the number the other day, and it struck me, I was surprised at how high it was, especially relative to something like Ethereum. I think something like 13.5% of total ETH right now is staked. And of course, such a wide discrepancy between the two is largely a result of the fact that withdrawals aren't enabled yet in Ethereum, but they will be soon. I'm curious if you have thoughts on why such a high number of Atom is staked, and there's a lot of speculation about how much ETH stakes might increase post withdrawal. I'm curious if you have a thought on that. Oh, looks like we lost Jay's audio.
Sorry, I was. I don't know much about the details of the ETH withdrawal situation, but I can comment anyways on everything else.
Yeah.
So the reason why 70% of atoms are staked is because we designed the incentive system to encourage staking so that 2/3 are staked. So it's showing that the system works, because if there are less than 2/3, then the inflation goes up, and so more people will earn, and these people are more likely to then restake and so on.
So, okay, without, I guess my takeaway from that is, without knowing the details on the kind of the incentive mechanism that Ethereum is using, it's hard to know exactly how much that might increase.
Well, I have a general statement, and I've made this statement before. It's intentionally kind of provocative, but and the gist is that it's not good to have a fee token be the staking token for the long running security of a blockchain. And I say this because if you look at, let's just draw analogies here, right? If you look at, let's say, the M2 monetary supply, right, like what, $20 trillion or something, and compare that to, so let's say compare the dollar to how much is at stake in our financial or key financial infrastructures. I don't know, maybe like the Visa network or something. So yeah, bear with me here. In proof of stake systems like Ethereum, it's really easy for whales, big ether holders, to stake their tokens and take control over the system, right? I believe that if Ether is going to become more and more like money, meaning gets more and more adopted as a system, and then the staking ratio will actually go down for Ethereum, and that it might even, if it's wildly successful, to go down to like 1%, say, then it's much easier for a collection of whales to take over the system. And the counter to that will have to be, printing a lot of Ether or coming up with some incentive to get a larger ratio staked in Ether, but that's an inflationary system, right? And at that point, it's looking more like atom than a phi token.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So there's going to be likely an equilibrium that ETH will find that I would argue 13.5% is likely low. And once withdrawals are enabled, I think it'll go up, but probably not anywhere close to Atom. The percent, 70% or so, which is what Atom is at currently. Maybe more, something more like 25% is kind of what I would guess.
Mhm.
But, it related to and we've talked about this before. I know, I mean, an initial idea within you, I know you've had this longstanding belief that it was important to separate the staking token from the fee token. And there was talk in Cosmos of doing this at one point for the hub, right? But that kind of, I think, isn't going to happen anymore, or at least anytime soon. I'm not sure if there's a push to get that going back, but I don't think so. But I do think you might use this thinking for GNO land as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there have been various proposals for introducing a secondary token that does not inflate like the atom. And yeah, initially we thought about just copying the atom distribution, which incidentally might be really important if they ban proof of stake. Just FYI,
Mhm.
then it might be the case that people want to fork and say, okay, well, here's a utility token. It's not the staking token. Anyways,
But none of those proposals have got much traction or interest, or what's kind of the current state of that? Is there still a push within Cosmos Hub to do that?
So what's happened is the decision to launch, no land and have a majority. And so, in other words, it's sort of being replaced, or the need for such a token is being replaced by the creation of other tokens that are airdrops to Atom.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, so there's that. Another thing that most people don't know is when we have ICS, it's going to be pretty easy to have, it could be a smart contract or any other application that automatically bonds their atoms like in proportion to the validator set. And then more or less, maybe a lot of the rewards and of transaction fees go back to the hub, to the atom stakers. But this would enable essentially a secondary token. So it's in that sense, what I'm saying is we can actually create permissionless photon experiments just by having ICS, and I believe this will happen, and that that the solution to photon is not to create another token, but actually to create an auto bonding system of the atom token and ICS.
Awesome. All right, Jay. Well, we're right at time. I wish we could actually keep talking. I know there's a lot of people that really love Cosmos that are listening and enjoyed this talk. So thank you very much for taking the time. And yeah, good to see you as always.
Thank you very much. Thank
All
you.
right.